The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, Vanderbilt alumni and friends. This is Celia Gregory here in Alumni Career Services with the Alumni Association. I hope and expect I've heard from some of you personally and had others attend these webinars before. So excited to welcome you to today's webinar, which is Teamwork and Collaboration, something I believe is really applicable to any industry, any stage in your career, and even outside of the career realm, community organizations, families, and pretty much anything we have to face, we face with others. So getting our mind around this for professional development and just day-to-day life is something that I'm very excited to share with you with our resident Nashville expert, Deb Palmer George. This, again, as a reminder, is one in our spring series that is wrapping up right now of monthly webinars, but we do intend to pick back up in the fall, and we always love hearing from you if there are certain topics that would really speak to you at this point in your life and things you think would be wonderful for this 45-minute time slot, lunchtime webinars. Please share your ideas with us, and we're happy to consider those for the future. But today's presentation will last around 45 minutes, and the time will be allotted at the end for questions, just so we can make sure Deb gets through all the content. Do feel free to type questions as you have them into the little box on the side panel of your screen, and I'll note those, and we'll make sure to address them in the order they've been submitted at the end of the presentation. So also make sure if you can't hear anybody right now, or hopefully you hear this, you need to dial in your audio PIN number so you can see and hear the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if folks can't hear what I'm saying now or can't hear Deb. And also, I'm pleased now to introduce you to Teamwork and Collaboration expert, Deb Palmer George. She is a facilitator, coach, and consultant committed to personal and professional growth for the benefit of her clients and community. Deb founded her independent consulting practice, Palmer Solutions, in 2001 after serving as Vice President of Human Resources and Business Development for a technology company, with which she'd started as an outside sales rep 15 years before. Based on this real-world experience and considering the whole system involved in an individual and an organization's success, Deb guides clients to thrive and move beyond challenges, adversity, and obstacles to create meaningful goals and achieve great results. Deb has a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and is a graduate of the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland. She holds the Appreciative Inquiry Certification from Case Western Reserve University. She's a licensed affiliate of Conscious Choosing and a World Cafe facilitator. Again, based here in Nashville, but Deb does consult clients from all over and organizations all around. So, Deb, thank you for leading this presentation today, and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Celia. I'm delighted to be with you, and I'm really glad to connect with everyone. You know, wherever you are, whatever your vocation, whatever type of organization you might find yourself spending time in, you know, I think we're actually all really experts on teamwork and collaboration because we all spend so much of our time in some kind of teams, you know, whether it's personally or professionally. And certainly I've had the privilege of serving on and consulting with or coaching many teams over the years. So given that teams are a reality of life, my hope is that in our time together today, everyone gets something of value, a tool, a perspective, an approach that you can use. Maybe you'll be reminded of something that worked when you were on a team way back when and you're just reminded of it, or maybe there will be something new that you're interested in trying out. With that in mind, I do want to encourage you to type any questions that you have into Celia. I'll be handing things back over to her at about 1:35 Eastern time so that we have time for questions. And then I also want to extend the opportunity to anyone who has a specific question or situation that you'd like an opportunity to delve into after the webinar. I'm open to scheduling a 15-minute block of time with anyone, again, who's interested to answer any specific questions that you might have, because you know, teams really they're a reality for us in our organizations and in our communities. They're a reality of the way that we effectively, you know, distribute and accomplish, whether it's important goals, projects, tasks, ongoing, ongoing responsibility. What I've found is that whatever our definition of teamwork, whatever it might be, and there are certainly some great definitions out there. Whatever it is, it's really people achieving results through their connections. And what I've discovered is that the stronger the connections among people, the stronger the results that they'll achieve. The question, it really is, what is it that makes those connections possible among team members? What is it that makes it possible for people to really get together around and have powerful, energizing connections to accomplish whatever matters most, especially in today's demanding, highly committed, multitasking realities, where oftentimes when team members get together, folks are bringing in experiences from other meetings and things that they've been doing before the team gets together. And sometimes we're not all fully present to really be able to form the connections needed to accomplish the team's shared purpose. So what makes those connections possible, I've discovered, is really intention and choice. And that is, before we jump into whatever the work is of the team, we really purposefully talk about our intentions, individually and collectively, as a team. Intentionally choosing how it is that we will, if you will, live together, as Anne Brown says here in this quote, which I think is wonderful, how it is we'll work together, how we'll go about approaching our purpose together. And it's really something that we need to talk about. Too often, what happens with teams is we jump into the work that we need to do, and we only start talking about how we're working once we've encountered difficulties. So this is really a proactive approach that begins with really the two essentials for every team, right? People and purpose. And so we start with each person really understanding and expressing what their connection is to the purpose of the mission of the team. And every team, whether it's an executive team leading a global organization, or it's a volunteer team working on a fundraiser for a school. Might be a project team that's going to form and disband, or it might be a standing team that's carrying out responsibilities over a long term. Every team has some purpose or some mission. And it's really important as a starting point that we understand the meaningfulness of that purpose or mission to each person. So why is it that everyone on the team cares about this team, cares about what the team is here to do? What's interesting and important to note is that the meaningfulness of the mission to each person does not need to be the same. In fact, what's best is when the meaningfulness is really diverse and that people come to the team with really different inspirations and motivations for being on and contributing to the work of the team. What does need to be the same, though, is the understanding of the mission. So it's important that team members are crystal clear on the team's reason for being and what it's responsible to deliver. So as we take a look at the team, we see that, in this case, this team has a shared mission that is clear and understood by all team members. So there's no question about what we're here to do, what the purpose is that we're here to carry out. And what we can honor and what we really want to understand is what is it that makes it meaningful to each person to be part of the team. This is a great question, this question about what is it that makes this team's purpose meaningful to you. This is a great question to ask when a team is starting up. It's also a great question for a team to revisit at any point in time in its work together. So now, once we're clear about the purpose for which the team exists and what it is that inspires or is important to team members about the purpose, our inclination is often to jump into actually doing the work. getting started on, whatever the tasks or responsibilities are that the team is designed or assembled to carry out. But in reality, when you think about accomplishing a task, in this case, I love the analogy of, the instructions to assemble a bicycle. If you've ever put a bicycle together, sometimes we, jump right in on the task. In reality, the first step in any bicycle instruction manual is always gather the tools and check to make sure that you have all the parts that are needed. So an important aspect of teamwork is to really, to get started by inventorying, all the tools, in this case, the strengths, the resources, the values, and so on, that are present among the team. And this is where a practice known as appreciative inquiry really becomes valuable. Before we jump into the task at hand, we want to really understand all the resources that are on board. What this does is this creates a strengths-based foundation for our teamwork. And it works by a principle that says that if we start by amassing an inventory or an understanding of what is, we really unleash for people positive energy as well as capacity, strength, and resources to create whatever is needed to move in the direction of our purpose. Oftentimes a question we'll ask team members is, how many people here are interested in serving or contributing to the success of the team? Everyone has that intention. Rarely do we encounter someone who says, my purpose is actually to see the team fail. That's really not the case. Most of the time, everyone on the team really wants to somehow contribute to the success of the team. So if our desire is to contribute or to serve, the only thing we have to serve from is our strengths. So this is really an important place for any team to start if our desire is to contribute to the successful mission of the team. No matter how significant and no matter how challenging the situation might be. Hopefully some of you out there might recognize this screenshot. It's from the movie Apollo 13, and it's a really great example of a team who came together around a very compelling mission in very challenging circumstances. After the explosion upon Apollo 13, they had to reformulate their mission to keep the astronauts alive in space long enough to figure out how to bring them home safely. What they discovered, of course, is that they had a challenge in needing to find a way to scrub carbon dioxide from the space capsule while they were figuring out how to bring the astronauts home. If you remember, either from the movie, if you're a fan of the movie, or if, like I was, you were around when it originally happened, you'll recall that to carry out their mission, they could use only what was on board that space capsule. And so they inventoried everything that was on board. They got all the engineers together, and using only those resources, they figured out a solution. So beginning with an inventory of everything we have on board is really critical if the team is going to work together, accessing its full strengths and resources. What's important to keep in mind here is, just like in the solution for Apollo 13, they ended up using tube socks and duct tape as part of the solution. So as you're doing your inventory, it's important that the team not take anything for granted, not discard a particular resource or a skill or an ability that a team member brings, because you never know when that might be the linchpin for a solution. A key resource then is conducting this positive core inventory of strengths and all the things that you described here. And taking the time to conduct that inventory first really makes those resources available as we're looking to collaborate, create, and innovate in carrying out the team's responsibilities. So this is a sample set of questions, and everyone, of course, will have access to this, the PowerPoint after the presentation. This is a really great set of questions that you can use on an existing team or when you're starting up a team to begin to inventory the strengths that everyone has to offer. I've found that regardless of the nature of the team that I'm working with and regardless of the challenge before the team, that when we ask questions from an unconditionally positive place, and when we ask people to recall times when they've been at their best, we find out what it is that, what the strengths are that can be used to carry out the responsibilities for this team. For example, I was working with a team, a manufacturing organization, and there was an awful lot of change, really just discontinuous, constant change happening within their industry. And one of the things that they were struggling with was resistance to change. And the CEO said, I've got a group of folks who are really, they're just so entrenched, and no one is really open to change. And so what we did is we brought the team together, and instead of saying, okay, everybody, why is everyone afraid of change? Why is everyone resisting change? Instead, the question we asked is, recall times in your life where you have experienced and worked with change productively, where times in your life where you have experienced growth, development, and change in any setting. As everyone engaged in that conversation, what they discovered is that they were all far better at dealing with change and had some really terrific perspectives on meeting and moving through change in a productive way. Well, I encourage you, whether it's an intact team or whether you're working with a team that's just getting started, to engage in this process of inventorying strengths and recalling best experiences. It really unleashes positive energy and capacity, what we call positive possibilities and so on, that have team members moving in, to use that term that gets used a lot now, has team members leaning in because they believe they have something to contribute, as opposed to team members stepping back or shutting down because they're not sure how they can contribute, or they find the team's, the responsibilities of the team might be too daunting. When we're reminded of times when we've been at our best, we feel a greater sense of capacity to meet the challenges ahead of us. That really leads us to turning our attention back to how we sustain connections as we're getting into our work together. One of the things that we find is that we lay out a plan, we have really great intentions, and then we actually get into the work. And we try things out, we offer ideas, we face challenges, we have questions, and sometimes what can happen is that our positive connections and our best intentions get lost in judgments, and they get lost in making interpretations or making meaning of our fellow teammates' contributions. I don't know if this has ever happened to any of you, where you've been in a meeting and someone will ask a question. They might say something like, well, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a minute and ask, what makes us think that we should be the ones to do this? And the question is coming actually from a really positive intention. The person is really desiring to contribute to the group, but the interpretation of the person's motive can sometimes have us judging their motive. So we can sometimes judge that the person is perhaps trying to derail, or they're not a team member, or they're not in it as a collaborator. This is an important place for us to pause and to recognize that everything every one of us does on a team is in service of one of our human needs. You know, if you're familiar with or recall, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, these needs for contribution, belonging, safety, recognition, community. These needs drive every action and every decision every one of us makes. As we're collaborating with our team members, when we notice ourselves experiencing something that maybe doesn't work for us, an important practice in our teamwork is for us to really pause and become curious about the needs that are fueling or driving our team members' contribution. To know that maybe someone asks a question in a way that doesn't work for us, or maybe someone doesn't accomplish a task the way that we had hoped for, or the way that they had committed to. As we deal with that action that didn't work, seeing and acknowledging that there was a need that was driving or behind that behavior really helps us to stay in positive regard and respect for each other as we're working out the challenges that we might have. So in this case, what we say as team members is that choosing curiosity is a key aspect of teamwork. What needs are fueling my choices? What needs are fueling the actions I'm taking? And what needs might be fueling my team member? What is it that they might value or care deeply about that's behind this action that's been taken? All the time mindful that as human beings, we have a tendency to judge ourselves by our own good intentions, but we tend to judge each other's by their impact. If we can pause when we notice ourselves reacting with a judgment, an interpretation about a fellow team member, if we can, in those moments where we notice ourselves getting distressed, judgmental, or defensive about something that's happening on the team, if we can pause, and if we can create a space between the stimulus, what's happened, and our response, we can find in that space the opportunity to choose a curiosity, the opportunity to give our fellow teammates the benefit of believing that there is a good intention behind the contribution, just as we give the benefit of that good intention to others. A tool then that we offer in teamwork is something we call the ABC pause. Being aware of what's happening in the moment, being aware of our own reaction. And you know, we know when we get triggered, whether we hold our breath, we feel a knot in our stomach, the jaw gets tight, the shoulders get tensed up, our mind starts racing. Being aware of our reaction and breathing, something we all need to do anyway. Breathing allows us to really interrupt our triggers, to slow down our reactions, and allows us to choose a constructive response, allows us to choose curiosity, to perhaps better understand the needs that are fueling or driving our teammates' actions, behaviors, and choices, and also to understand the needs that are driving our own. There was a team that I served on that was working on something that was very near and dear to my heart, something that I had a lot of personal passion around and experience around, as well as something that I was having an opportunity to bring my own professional skills into, what I noticed happening is that I would take on a lot of assignments. You know, when there was a task to be done, you know, when someone said, who wants to volunteer to do this, that, or the other thing, I would jump right in. Absolutely, I would do it. I would find myself overcommitted and then oftentimes not able to fulfill my commitments to the team. And it was embarrassing for me, and it was really, I know, frustrating for a number of my colleagues. When I explored what was behind that, what I recognized was that my need for contribution was really strong. And as a result of that, it was fueling me to want to take on everything. What I recognized when I honored that my need was for contribution, I could relax and be more choiceful and more intentional in asking myself the question, what's the thing that I'm best suited to do? What are the commitments that I really can follow up on? For me, it made for a better experience as a member of the team. And oh, by the way, it gave other teammates an opportunity to step up and step in because I wasn't hogging all of the opportunities. I wasn't hogging all of the assignments. So in choosing curiosity, what that allows us to do is to really follow the truth about results, which is that results are really, the pathway to results is really through relationships, and that it's in positive connections that are formed through sincere questions. Questions like, what is it that you're thinking? What is it that you're hoping? Help me understand what you envision. If this is something that sounds like it might not work, what is it that you believe is important for us to consider? What would it look like if it was possible for us to work this out? What would be happening? And intentional listening. Listening with the intention to understand and really the intention to encourage and invite your teammates' contributions and their collaboration, as opposed to listening, as Stephen Covey said, with the intent to respond, but really listening with intention to value and understand our colleagues, our teammates' contributions, really helps tend that positive connection. So a guiding principle in our teamwork is to continue to return to what question could I ask myself to understand what my colleagues are observing, what they're feeling, what needs might be present right now, so that I can be part of helping to craft whatever the way forward is. And just in case we confuse teamwork as needing to constantly have the answer, you know, I think that, you know, if Albert Einstein could take a curious stance in being the great genius that he was, I think we can all take a cue from him in our teamwork, and to really engage our curiosity as much as we engage or want to offer our suggestions and our ideas. Curiosity really takes us deeper, and as Wynton Marsalis shares with us, that in our curiosity, engaging our listening really allows us to contribute most to whatever the team's product is. So just a quick summary here. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but I really wanted everyone to have just an outline for some of the basics of working with conflict in the moment, so that we can transform conflict into creativity. We can actually transform what we think is conflict into raw material that we can use to collaborate with. Taking us to just a point about really collaboration and the genius of what we call yes and. And this comes out of improvisational techniques where, you know, when comedians or actors are improvising together, one of the guidelines is always yes and, that when you know, one of your fellow performers tosses something out, you know, we can't respond to it with, yeah, no, I don't like that. Or no, that doesn't work for me. Toss something else out. Our response is always yes and. We acknowledge what they've offered, and then we build on that idea by linking to it with an and sharing some idea or question to help continue building out the idea and building out the possibilities. This is a teamwork practice that I really highly recommend, and there are a couple of resources here. There's a great Fast Company article on it, or there's a really good book titled Yes and, with lessons from Second City. The genius of yes and is it really allows us to continue focusing on and building toward where we want to go as opposed to where we don't want to go. For teams, this is a guiding principle to stay with and focus on what the direction that we want to go, because that's the direction we're going to want to move in. You know, when they teach race car drivers, you know, when they're teaching them to drive around the track at 150, 200 miles an hour, what they tell drivers to do is to focus on where you want to go, not on where you don't want to go. So don't look at the wall. If you don't want to go there, don't look at the wall, because if you look there, you'll drive there. And we've probably all had that sort of experience ourselves. We really need to focus on where we want to go. So for our team, in our teamwork, we want to set an affirmative focus as we're dealing with challenges or collaborating on solutions. When we find ourselves as a team talking about what we don't want, or things that we're afraid of happening, or challenges, conditions that we're faced with that aren't working, these are questions that can help us redirect our focus toward what we want. So again, as a team member, if I find that we're focused on what we don't want to happen or what we're afraid of, what I might offer my team members is a question like, okay, so I hear us saying this is what we don't want. So what is it that we do want? What would it look like on the other side of this difficult situation or this challenging challenging circumstance? So these are a set of questions that you can use in your teamwork to define that positive focus. And as you've defined that positive focus and that process for moving forward, as a team, we want to agree in writing what that process is and how we'll go about accomplishing our work together. One of the challenges that I've discovered in working with teams who've hit roadblocks or who aren't really manifesting the results along the way that they're interested in is that they've often relied too much on verbal agreements and assumptions about commitments and what they've meant. So the team meets, we make some verbal agreements, and then everyone goes off to accomplish whatever they've agreed to. The team comes back together a week later and finds themselves saying things like, well, that's not what I did. I thought we meant this. I thought you were going to do that. So we're unclear about our commitments. And I wish I could ask everybody, I wish I could see you all. I'd ask you to raise your hands on how many of you have been on teams that have had the same meeting over and over again, like 4 or 5 times, because you're revisiting commitments or needs that we thought we had moved on from or things we thought we'd accomplished. So what we like to say is that agreements that aren't written down are fantasies. A commitment is only a commitment when it's written down. A process is really only a process when it's documented. So on the team, it's important to assign roles, and these roles can rotate on the team, or they can be assigned roles that someone might carry forward. We want someone on the team who really helps to facilitate and support the conversation, to help support the engagement when the team is together. We want someone who keeps track of commitments, meeting notes and documentation. We want someone who watches the time to ensure the team is using its time as a resource in a wise way. And we want someone who can really provide the team with a return to purpose, or a return to the objectives that the team has committed to. And so by having those roles on the team, and again, there can also be different roles, of course, depending on what the specific responsibilities of the team are. But those teamwork roles can really help folks to ensure that the process and the purpose that you've agreed to stay front and center as we're carrying out our work together. So this final activity is also drawn from that Apollo 13 experience. There was a point in time in the Apollo mission where in Mission Command, one of the NASA brass was overheard to say, I believe this could be the worst disaster in NASA history. The team at this point was hard at work on a solution, and they were trying to figure out how to get the astronauts home safely. And so this NASA official was overheard to say, I believe this could turn out to be our worst disaster in NASA history. The mission commander interrupted him and said, I beg your pardon, sir, but I believe this could turn out to be our finest hour. Those are both examples of fantasies of the outcome of the team's work. One is if you will, a negative fantasy or a deficit fantasy, and the other is a fantasy of abundance or possibility, envisioning what the team's work looks like having turned out to be your finest hour. I offer you this exercise in your teamwork, whether, again, you're getting started as a team or whether a team is facing a major goal, a major project, or some sort of adversity, is to envision what it would look like being at some point in the future, looking back on the big challenge, looking back on the major goal, looking back on the team's primary responsibility as having turned out to be their finest hour. What's happening? What choices did we make? How did we get there? Most importantly, how is it that we connected our strengths as individual team members to unleash the power to perform? And how is it that we connected our strengths to the hope, to the vision for our team, and allowed whatever the transformation might be, whatever the desired outcome is from this team's work, to be manifest by connecting strengths, everything that we have to offer, to whatever the mission or purpose is of the team. And as a result, meeting everyone's need for contribution. I wish everyone the best in your teamwork, connecting strengths to strengths and unleashing that power to perform, and connecting strengths to hope to achieve whatever transformations matter in your organizations and in your world. Celia, I'll turn things back over to you for questions.
Yes, Deb, thank you so much. That was so much great content, and I wrote down a lot of your quotes. But be assured, folks that are attending today, or maybe even folks that could not attend but registered, I will have this presentation archived in full, so the audio and of course, the slides advancing the full content will be available on our expert advice webpage, where you can find other past webinars, and when we have future webinars lined up, that's where they will live. So a little housekeeping, but I would love to get some questions in. If anybody attending wants this hands-on, one-on-one advice now. And then, of course, in addition, Deb's offered so kindly her 15-minute chunks if you have a specific thing you'd rather not raise with the group. And I will send you her contact information so you can set those up after the presentation today, as well as a request for feedback about this. We did have one question come in so far, and please, with the time we have left, folks, do submit some. How would you suggest articulating the collaborative skills you've acquired on a resume or maybe in a job interview?
Oh, thank you. That's a great question. What I recommend is to begin by doing that inventory on your own. So to spend some time on your own, reflecting on those collaborative skills, times where you've recognized that you've really been a contributor on a team, and outline what it is that made it possible for you to be such an effective collaborator or such an effective team member. Identify or list out those talents, and then on a resume, what you can do is you can articulate a few of those overarching skills or practices that you bring. And then in interviews, a really popular technique right now is behavioral interviewing or performance-based behavioral interviewing. And so those are interviews where you know, the interviewer will ask you to give an example of a time that you, you know, performed well on a team, or an example of yourself as a collaborator. So have a few of those stories prepared, and there's a great model or a great way to pattern your stories called the STAR technique. STAR stands for situation or task, action, and result. So the way that you want to pattern those stories is to start by sharing, here's the situation or the task that my team was faced with. Here's the action that I took. Here's what I did to contribute, and here's what the result was of that.
Excellent.
I hope that helps.
Yeah. No, yes, of course, and that's great. And I think everybody having I can say as an interviewer myself, people that have examples at the ready that can really demonstrate what they're capable of in teams is huge. I'm not just saying I'm a team player.
Yeah.
Okay, another attendee has asked, can you tell us more about appreciative inquiry for teams? So what is that? You know so much about that, Deb. Maybe touch on what that means and how you can use it.
Yeah. Oh, wow, another great question. By the way, there's a really great book with even more resources that's specifically appreciative team building, and I'm happy to share that by follow-up. So appreciative inquiry for teams is really a useful place to start, because appreciative inquiry starts with a positive definition of the team's responsibility or task and ensures that team members are very clear about what that defined responsibility or purpose is in affirmative terms. And you know, as we often say, you know, we can't do a don't, if that makes sense. So what appreciative inquiry does is it really focuses on what we're here to do, then moves us into the process of discovering all the resources that team members are bringing, the strengths that team members are bringing, the assets and the core values, to form some agreements for how we'll be operating and what the resources are that we have at our disposal. That's really useful for teams, because sometimes we end up going in search of resources or strengths or capabilities that we think we need, when actually they're already resident on the team. We just didn't take the time to inventory them. So that's why appreciative inquiry, and particularly starting with discovery, is so useful for teams. The next aspect of appreciative inquiry is what we call dream and design. And this is doing that visioning of a successful outcome for our work, and then the process that we used to get there. And this is rooted in an appreciative inquiry principle, which is that positive image equals positive action. So by creating a detailed vision for what we're moving toward and how we intend to get there, that future vision creates an instruction manual for the positive actions to take in the present. Just a quick word about appreciative inquiry. You know, appreciation has a twofold definition. It means to recognize, right? To really see, to prize what is present before us, to acknowledge it. It also means to increase in value. So the process then of inquiry or curiosity into what is there that's present among our team really allows us to, again, acknowledge what's present, and then also allows us to increase in value what we have that is, you know, most worthwhile, most useful, and so on. This is an important moment. I want to take a quick pause also to say that appreciative inquiry unleashes for us a positive energy and a sense of capacity to face what's not working, to face our challenges, and to face adversity. So appreciative inquiry doesn't ignore what's wrong. Rather, what it says is let's start from a foundation of what we have going for us as we turn our attention to creating solutions for what could be more right. So in appreciative inquiry, as we're facing, you know, as a team, as we're facing challenging or difficult information, what we like to do is to say, instead of looking at something as being, you know, negative or wrong, we want to ask, how is this information useful to us? What is it that it can point us in the direction of, that we either need to create or develop, or that we already have that we can build on? I hope that's useful. And again, Celia, I'll send you a link to so you can share the book on appreciative team building for anyone who's interested.
Okay, that would be great. And that is, folks, all the time we have, but I want to thank you again, Deb, for sharing your time and your expertise with us, and folks for signing in and sharing part of your day. I know it's pretty outside. 'Tis the season to eat lunch outdoors and not at the desk. So really appreciate you being here, and look forward to presenting more for your professional development and work-life balance and maybe job seeking. Again, please reflect these topics that would best serve you now and in the near future when I send you a survey today. We'd love to hear from you about this particular webinar and things that you would like to have before you in the future from your alumni association, career-related and otherwise. So thank you so much. Thank you, Deb, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.